My name is Tanya McKenzie, and you can find me at the intersection of public relations and leadership. Join us as we talk to organizational leaders, elected officials, experts, authors, artists, and personalities sharing their stories, talking about how they got to where they are and how they continue to learn and lead the way. So without further ado, let's get into it. Greetings, good people. It's your girl T. I am here today with an amazing guest. I have been waiting to bring her to you for a really long time, and we're going to make it happen today. You know, for those of you that might not remember, I am a commissioner, LA County Commissioner for Alcohol and Other Drugs. We work on solving the big problems in drug and alcohol, addiction and abuse, solutions, prevention, all that cool stuff in Los Angeles County. LA County is the largest county in the nation, so we have big problems. I think part of being able to solve problems is understanding how they became a problem in the first place, right? And hearing the stories and the humanity behind some of the problems that we're trying to solve. Solutions come from thoughtfulness. Solutions come from, different perspectives. Sometimes there's not a one-size-fits-all problem for alcohol and drugs and substance abuse. But today we're going to hear from someone that has been there, done that, and done it well, the recovery part, the problem-solving part, and bringing her story to the masses for several different reasons. One is because she's hilarious. She has a great personality, and she has decided to share her story in a way that allows for us to find solutions and look at people with the humanity that they deserve, even when they are dealing with stuff. Okay, so we're going to get into the stuff. We're going to meet the lady. With no further ado, Miss Laura Robbins, how are you doing today?
I am doing really well, Tanya. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm really excited about this conversation, and I appreciate you.
I am too. Okay, so I'm gonna try not to fan out, but part of me being a fan is also me kind of championing people that can recognize and admit when they have a problem, no matter what it is. Okay, I know some narcissists that still can't decide that they probably need to stop, but coming to the conclusion that, hey, I'm the problem and I have to solve my problem. Addicts, I know gambling addicts, just hoarders. People have all kind of problems, but you can't solve them until you acknowledge that you have them. So I just want to give my kudos to you. I want to thank you for being here. And I want you to tell the people why you wrote this book. It is so revealing.
It is so revealing. Yeah, and thanks for that question. So the book is Stash My Life in Hiding. It was published by Simon & Schuster on March 7th of this year. And at the time that I wrote it, I was I 12? 12 years sober, going on 13, I think. Now I'm a little over 15 years sober. And when I got sober in 2008, and when I say sober, I mean that I'm completely free and abstinent from all substances, all mind-altering substances. But I'm also in recovery, which I think is different than just being clean and abstinent. And we can talk about that a little bit. But when I got sober in 2008, I'm like a book girl. I know everything I know from reading books and watching people, but first from reading books. And I kind of haunted bookstores that summer, browsing the shelves discreetly, trying to find a book that addressed the issues I was being challenged with, which were, I was, high profile. It was in a high profile marriage that was ending. I was a leader in my children's school community. I was the PTA president. I had just been asked to join the board. I'm Black, and I was, circling the drain with an addiction that had just taken me out by the knees. And, it didn't have to hit all those points, but I wanted a book that I could read that would tell me how to navigate what I was going through, written by somebody who looked like me. And I kid you not when I said I could not find anything, nothing that represented my experience that was written by someone who looked like me. And so I kind of let that go. After I got sober, I was very busy. I had a lot to do. I had amends to make. I had to be present for my kids. But, somewhere around 2018, I started looking for those books again, um, and was horrified to find that there still weren't any. There were no books written by women of color, in this genre that they now call Quitlit. That's Quitlit. And it's literature that helps you examine your relationship with drugs and alcohol. And so I wrote Stash, in the hopes that it becomes one of many.
I don't know if you can see this. See, this is the book. I need y'all to get it, and I need you to read it. Okay? I need you to get it, and I need you to read it. Because there's a strength in, like I continue to say, acknowledging, okay, this isn't working. I need to do something different. What happened for you to decide this isn't working? And then we'll get into some more of the more salacious stuff that people like to hear.
Yeah, I mean, I think in the book I write about a 10-month period of my life. It's March of 2008 through December of 2008, and in the middle of those, or actually kind of the first quarter of those 10 months, I have several events which might be called a bottom, where someone might be able to point to my life and say, okay, that's it. She's got to be done now, because she's using and drinking to the point where she's going to lose the things she loves the most, which are my children, which are still my children. But those were not my bottom. The thing that made me change, the thing that I point to as my bottom, was really just this kind of crossroads I was at on July 4th of that year, where I wanted to take my kids to see the fireworks. We were at our beach house in Malibu, and I was in such debilitating withdrawal that I was unable to do so. So I sent them with a neighbor. And I was at that point where I couldn't get loaded and I couldn't be sober. Like, either was unsurvivable for me. And, nobody knew. Nobody really knew what was going on, but I knew that it was time to tell the people that needed to know so that I could go get help.
There are functional and there are dysfunctional addicts. Okay. I know people that can get high all day and live their best freaking life all day. And people around them don't know that they have a problem. And then obviously there are those that cannot function, dysfunctional. Where did you find yourself in this? Like, talk about your addiction in a way that helps people understand you can go from one to the other. Mm-hmm. Because you were high functioning. You weren't just functional, you were high functioning at some point, right?
Yeah.
And then you get to a point where you're like, this isn't working, doesn't feel good, I need help.
Yeah. So like I mentioned, I was the Parent Association president the year that I write about, it was in this community, this school community, this very large, elite, independent school. And I was, I did my job. I showed up for all the functions. I was, in charge of all the committees. I was very front and center. I was also, in our marriage, even though it was ending, we were still very social. So there were dinner parties and premieres, and this was in Hollywood. And it was just, like the epitome of the Hollywood life, whatever that you imagine that being. That's what my life looked like at the time. It was a very privileged life. And in order for me to keep prying eyes off of me, in order for me to not make anyone suspicious, basically, I needed to time out. And I don't mean time out, like take a time out, but like pace out and plan out, like strategize how much of the drug that I was taking, which was Ambien, when I could take it, how much of it I could take, and what the withdrawal would look like and how long would that last, and how long can I be in that withdrawal and be in public? Because every day there was excruciating withdrawal. Every night, I would knock myself out with it. The plan every day was to wait until I put my kids to bed before I used it. And as I got closer and closer to that July 4th date that I spoke about, starting in March, going to July 4th, I was not able to wait. I couldn't wait until I put them to bed anymore. My now ex-husband was starting to get suspicious that something was going on. And before it was taken from me, I wanted to take some action to get in front of it.
How did you wind up getting addicted? And what were you addicted to?
Yeah. So I wound up, I was prescribed Ambien, which is a sleeping pill. It's classified as a hypnotic, I think, but it's a narcotic. And I was, what I believe, I had undiagnosed postpartum anxiety after my second son was born. My boys were born in 98 and then 99. And I was not depressed, but I was absolutely anxious. Like any pre-wake up whimper, I would be checking them and making sure that they were okay. I could not sleep when they slept, which is what they tell you to do with babies. And they would wake each other up. My younger one was tiny and he would wake up and cry. Then the older one would start crying and then they would both meet me in the middle of the night. And my husband would have to work, he had to be on set the next morning. So it was all me all night. And then I was expected to function during the day as their mom and as everything else I was as well. So my doctor, when I went to him, basically in tears, saying, I don't know what's wrong with me, but I can't sleep. He prescribed this to me and it was supposed to be a temporary fix, I believe. Like, let's get you reset because you're closing in on a nervous breakdown. I don't think he said nervous, but some type of psychotic break, some kind of break. So let's get you sleeping again, reset your system and see what's what. But it works so well. One a night was this nirvana for me. I'd never experienced anything like that. It was bliss. When I took that pill, the world disappeared and I woke up feeling ready to conquer it. And nothing like that. I had never experienced anything like that. So I'm like, yo, doc, I'm good. We don't need to revisit anything. I got the secret panacea right here. And so that's what I did. I kept taking it and I kept one a night, for like a year. And then like it was 1.5 to go to sleep like the second year because one wouldn't put me to sleep. And
every day, every night,
every night, happily every night. But it wasn't getting in the way of anything. In fact, I really thought, Tanya, that I would not be able to show up for my family without them. Like the way I was showing up was kind of irritable and cranky and not very fun. And I didn't want to do too much. And mind you, I wasn't taking it during the day at this point. This was just like getting that full night's sleep. I was fun mom. I was fun wife. I was fun friend. I was generous and curious and warm. Everything I wanted to be. So I really thought, I'll take this every night for the rest of my life. Absolutely. And this is how I'm going to show up for my family, the way I want to show up. But at the end, I was taking up to 10 a night, and which is lethal, and washing it down with alcohol. So I needed the alcohol in order to boost it. That's the term that I learned in rehab. That's what you do to get the maximum effect out of whatever it is that you're taking. And I discovered it by accident, and then I started using it. The combination of those two should have killed me. And I don't know why I didn't die.
10?
Up to 10. Not 10 every night, but certainly up to 10. Yeah.
What? Okay, so what, you would take like 5 and you're like, okay, well, that's not enough.
I would take like 3 to get to sleep. But see, the thing is, it would wear off so quickly because my tolerance was so high. So instead of sleeping through the night, I was waking up at 1 And then I was waking up again at 3. And then I would, probably 3, 4 o'clock. 4 o'clock is probably the latest I would take it because I would have to get up with the kids. But yeah, there were absolutely nights where I took 10. Yeah.
Why were you hiding them? What, I mean, you're grown, you know what I'm saying? You're grown and your husband was working and doing his thing. So who were you hiding them from?
Well, I think, the reason I title the book Stash, um, stash, we think about a drug stash, but I think stash is pretty universal. I think everyone has a stash of something. I have stashes of shopping bags, like from stores that I love, and because they're beautiful, they're really luxurious. And I don't need them, and I don't have them out because my boyfriend now, he would be like, "What are you doing with all these bags?" So they're stashed. I have stashes of chocolate. I have stashes, I have stashes around, and they are private now. They are no longer secret, but I absolutely have stashes. And I think that my idea was that this was my idea of control. This addiction was, I had the illusion that I was controlling what I took and how much I took and when I took it. And if someone else was let in, they might take that control away from me. And I would be uncomfortable. And discomfort was my biggest fear.
I grew up with parents of addiction. Dad's currently in the hospital
Oh,
because
no.
of addiction. And I want to ask you what your children had to go through while you were dealing with this addiction, and then once you decided to fix your addiction.
Yeah. My kids were pretty little when this was happening. And like I said, up until that year, 2008, what they knew was that they had this very active, loving mom, um, and they didn't know what happened after I put them to bed. And that was most of the time. For the last couple months, when I couldn't wait, I was, like I said, I had this very privileged life. So I'm sure that I would ask the nanny to put them to bed on those nights, and I would go to bed early. I would say that I was not feeling well or something, and I would put myself to bed early. But I really tried not to. So what they remember now as 24 and 25-year-old men, is very little about the addiction itself. They don't ever remember seeing me drink. They don't remember what led up to my going to treatment, except for that things were strained in the house between their dad and I. And we were getting a divorce then. So they remember a little bit of that, but actually not much of that either. They had a really hard time with me leaving for 30 days to go get help. They really just were missing me and wanted me home. They were so happy when I came home. And who I was when I came home, maybe it looked the same to them, but it wasn't. I looked present before, but I was always planning my next time to get loaded. It was never about them. It was about the addiction prior to me going into treatment. And when I came back, it was all about them. So they're extremely proud of the book, but they don't really feel connected to the story that I tell in it.
How do you feel about that?
I mean, I feel like I probably did a good job fooling them.
I mean,
You know what I mean?
how does it make you feel that during their childhood, there are things that happen in their life that they are actually unaware of or disconnected from you?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't have that's not something I have a hard time with. I feel like their dad and I did our best to protect them, and I think we did a good job of doing that. They are not disconnected from me, but they're just disconnected from the story that I write about in Stash, which again was, like I said, it was a 10-month story. So they just don't remember much about it. And they have heard it from their girlfriends who have read it. They have heard me talk about it. They've watched me on, Tamron Hall and MSNBC talking about it. And they are really, like I said, they're proud of me, but they don't think, oh, that hurt when mom did that. Like, that's not something that they experienced then. Like I said, they were little too. Had they been older, it would have been a completely different story.
So while you were dealing with your addiction and your husband didn't know,
Yeah.
he was, I'm guessing, supplementing where you were missing out on, or were you not missing out on anything based on what you were using?
I was full-time mom, and I didn't take sick days even during that, but I would take sick hours and sick, like mom has a headache at the end of the day, that kind of thing. Their dad was around, but he was working. He worked in the entertainment industry, and he was on set, on location for the majority of the time that I write about. He's an amazing dad, and when he was home, he was absolutely hands-on. But this particular period of time, he just wasn't around very much.
You were high functioning, like
Yeah,
okay.
I was high functioning. Haha, that could have been the name of my book, by the way.
High functioning.
Yes.
That's
That's good. That's
good.
really good. Yeah.
Oh my God, man, I just still have so many questions. So what about the rest of your family? Mom, brothers, uncles, cousins?
No, they didn't know. My mom knew something was wrong, but like I said, I was getting a divorce. So my malaise, my not returning calls, as quickly as I might, was attributed to that. Same with my friends. So they understood my behavior to be unlike me, but they also understood it to be something that might be typical of someone in my position getting a divorce without the addiction.
Why the divorce? What happened in this privileged life, this beautiful privileged life that you were living, and you decided, yeah, no, I can't do this anymore?
So truly, and I don't like to tell the story of my divorce itself, but what I can say is that who I showed up as in my marriage was someone I desperately wanted to be, but wasn't. I was someone who was not aligned. Like the person that I am authentically would not have been the Parent Association president.
Mm.
I'm not that person authentically, but I did so because I felt like it was expected of someone who was living the life that I was living. And I
Mm.
really wanted to be that person. I know women like the woman I was trying to be. Some of those women are my dearest friends, but it's not me authentically. So what I did, and I think this was the scaffolding for my addiction, was I showed up as someone that I wasn't, and the person that I am authentically, and that person who I pretended to be or wanted to be, the difference was just too far to bridge. And the addiction did the pills did that nicely. I didn't have to feel that distance. I didn't have to feel like I was pretending or lying. And, once I got to this point in our marriage, it wasn't that the marriage was bad or that he was a bad guy at all, because he isn't. It was really that I wasn't the person that I came in as, pretending to be. And I needed to find out who I was without the trappings of a life like mine.
Let me ask you this.
Mm.
So you got married before you had kids, right?
Yes.
So you guys had this marriage, this
Yes.
relationship, fell in love, you decided to get married. You became a mom, you started doing all these things that really aren't who you are. Whose idea was that? Were you just deciding this is who I'm supposed to be, or did you feel like he wanted you to be this person? Because he obviously fell in love with someone that wasn't that person that then you became.
Yes. Yes. Yes, you're right. I think I have to go back a little bit further. So I had this emotionally abusive stepfather who,
There you
um,
go.
the temperature in our house would turn up, just by me being me. If I came in being myself, it just rubbed him the wrong way. If I came back from school, excited about something that happened, I was usually punished in short order for that. And he was not physically abusive to me, but the emotional abuse was really traumatic for me. And I learned to adjust myself according to, or edit myself according to my surroundings with him. Also, being the only Black person in my all white independent school growing up. And then eventually just the only Black person in my class. But for a long time, I was the only Black one in the school. Again, I was always code switching, altering, and editing who I was. I didn't graduate from high school. I never went to college. These were secrets of mine. I was ashamed of these things. I never told anybody. So when I met my now ex-husband, he met somebody that was very edited and altered anyway. Editing who I was natural for me. So what I saw was this life that looked really attractive. I knew that the person I was authentically wouldn't be allowed in that life as she was, or at least is what I thought. So I decided, and I don't even know if it was a decision, I just did. I just chameleoned myself into this life, assuming that eventually it would feel authentic to me, because this was the dream. This was the big house. This was the adoring, man. This was the successful man. This was the nannies, the housekeepers, the private jets. Like, this was the life that I thought would make everything okay. And it didn't. So even before kids, I was someone who I wasn't. And it wasn't just because of the marriage, but because I had already been editing myself, but I did more of that dating him even. I anything that I thought that, might disappoint him without anyone asking me to, I corrected. I'll put correction in air quotes. So that's how it went for me. And it went for me like that until I got into recovery.
You decided to get the divorce while you were battling the addiction.
Yes. Not something I would recommend to anyone else ever. It's really hard to do at the same time. It
Talk
could have
about
killed
that.
me. Yeah, it was the reason was, I had this medical emergency that I write about in the beginning of the book. And I really thought that it was my trying to keep up with who I pretended to be, in my marriage, my trying to keep up face in my marriage that was killing me. I thought that was it. I thought if I didn't have to put on this act, if I could just figure out who I am, then I can just be that Laura and I won't need drugs. I won't need anything. And and I was unhappy. But I thought I was unhappy because of the marriage, but really what I'm understanding now is that I was unhappy because I had put myself in a position where I couldn't be myself. But that was my solution. My solution was I'll get divorced and then eventually I'll be able to give up the drugs and everything will go back to the way it's supposed to be, or go to be the way it's supposed to be. But I didn't, again, that illusion of control, I started an avalanche when I asked for that divorce, and everything just kind of came down.
Yeah, because I'm sure. Okay, so he found out that you were battling an addiction during your announcement of the divorce.
No, a few months in.
Okay.
Yeah.
What was his reaction? Because I know he had to be like, "What?"
He was very kind. I don't know what he knew, but I know he had suspicions at that point that there was something else going on. I think it was a relief for him to find out that this was something that I had named that could be treated, and that I could get better. He was absolutely rooting for me to get better. And So yeah, he was very kind. And in fact, I write about this in the book. He was so kind that I was suspicious of his motives for being kind. But I didn't need to be.
That's a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. It
So
is.
how do you carry that into recovery? Because that at some point, I'm guessing you're like, he was a good man. I
Yeah.
was the problem. He was a good dad. It
Yeah.
was me. And reading the book, you are not malicious. So you're not one of those F him.
No.
So there has to be some weight that you carry in, I guess, how this all played out for him also.
Certainly there was. I was riddled with guilt in the beginning, and you know, the longer I've had to look back at it, and the more discussions I've had with him, I also I write this in the book. I was like, it was like he and I were both in a rowboat, and we were both punching holes in the side. Like the boat was going down. He was doing his part, I was doing my part, but my addiction made bigger holes in the boat. So it wasn't like he was without his part, but I think that the things that you mentioned, the fact that he is a good man, the fact that he is an amazing father, um, those things were really important to my recovery. And I had a partner during my recovery. We went on our family trips after we got divorced with the kids. Like we did things that everybody said we shouldn't do, including our couples therapist, our divorce therapist, who I would highly recommend for anybody getting a divorce. Only in LA. But
Right.
no, she was really helpful as to how we best support our children through the divorce. And we just did it our way, and it worked. And like I said, I felt extremely supported. And if he and I had stuff, we worked through it, because our goal was and is to put our children first.
What did your mom say when she found out?
She was just really sorry that I had been going through it by myself, and that she didn't know. I think that's the reaction of most of the people who love me. The women that I write in the book about in the book, my friends, my Sex in the City friends, they all had that same reaction, like very tearily, like, you kept something from me, and I could have helped, I could have, had I known, I would have been there for you however you needed me to. And, that was really a big part of my amends.
Do
Um,
people
yeah.
around you know that when it comes to addiction, though, there's nothing that they can do? Like, is that a conversation that you eventually had with them? Like, girl, you can't.
I absolutely do. I say that, but like you just said, people don't really know that. And I think, the humanity of the situation is, what can I do to help? And the reality of the situation is nothing until I ask. Nothing. And I may never ask, you know? And that I think is like one of the realest things about addiction, is that you can put every strategy in place to help somebody who is suffering from an addiction or struggling, and until they want it, nothing makes a difference. It's just placeholders.
Did you eventually wind up having that conversation with your mom about how you felt about your stepdad?
Yes,
Tell
yes.
me
She and
about
I have had several conversations about it, and she made the most beautiful amends to me. She was very young. She was 19 when she had me. She was 23 when she met him, which is the age of my youngest son.
it.
And well, he'll be 24 this month, but still, I'll keep it the 23 for a while. But um and she was, she had grown up in an abusive household, and she had been attracted to an abuser. And she takes responsibility for that, and has made a really thorough amends to me for it. And she absolutely sees how it set me up in life.
Mm. Abuse. I think people hear the word abuse and they always assume it's like physical.
Yeah.
My grandmother, because my mom, had a substance abuse problem herself. And my grandmother, I lived with my grandmother, and her husband, it was abusive, but it wasn't in the
Mhm.
physical form. And it's like mentally, emotionally. He would go, I'm going to gross you out. He would go in the trash can. Um, he would go in the trash can and unwrap our pads to see if
Mm.
we were having a period.
Wow.
How disgusting. But
Yeah.
that was the type of behavior, right? So
Yeah.
people need to understand too, abusive isn't just putting hands on people. It's behaviors, it's things that you say, it's how you move, especially around young girls, young
Yes.
people.
Yes.
That is weird.
It's and there's emotional abuse, like you said. There's also psychological abuse.
Psychological abuse.
Yeah. And that's, it can be called gaslighting. It happens a
Yes.
lot in the workplace, where people, it's more than just a microaggression. But yeah, there's all different kinds of abuse, and not all of it is visible, right? It's not something that we can go and report at a police station, but it's abuse nonetheless. And the trauma it leaves behind, I feel like I'm absolutely in recovery from drugs and alcohol, but I'm more so in recovery from the trauma that I experienced. And as this trauma heals, my desire to drink and use lessens and lessens and lessens. I don't need it anymore. And I did.
15 years.
15 plus. Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Congratulations to you. Congratulations to your family. They got a
Yeah.
whole Laura. They got the whole Laura. But look, you have been doing your own thing. Like, you married into a life of glitz and glamour and all that wonderful stuff. And now, girl, you are on bestsellers list, and you showing up on TV screens. Like, what is that for you now?
Yeah, it's a trip. It is absolutely a trip. It is. I'm really, like, I'm a writer through and through. My happy place is right where you're looking at me, at my desk. I don't care to go anywhere, do anything for any reason. Occasionally out to dinner, but really I'm happier at home. And I wrote this book with all my heart. Um, and I really wanted to be responsible with it. I checked it with my kids. I checked it with my ex-husband. I didn't want this book to hurt anybody or destroy anyone's lives. And, I put it out there thinking that maybe it would help someone like me. And, it's done really well this year. It's done surprised. I think even Simon and Schuster is surprised at how well it's doing. Because it has gotten a lot of publicity. And you know what? Being the only Black face, the only Black voice, and quit lit in that genre, I hope it does make a lot of noise. I hope it does get a lot of attention, so that publishers see, oh, we can buy more of these books. We can tell more of these stories, and they will sell. People will buy them.
Quit lit.
Because, yeah,
Tell that again for me.
yeah, QUIT, new word, LIT.
Quit lit.
Yeah. And, there are no Asians in Quit Lit. There are no Hispanics or Latinos in Quit Lit. There are no brown people in Quit Lit. There are only white women and white men, period. Yes. I'm talking about in the genre, like if you look at the top 30 in this category, there's a woman named Cupcake Brown. I don't know if you've heard of her. She's amazing. And she wrote a book called A Piece of Cake in 2007. And it was a bestseller, and it was about her addiction. Her story, unlike mine, includes prostitution and sexual abuse and things that are really important. But there aren't any stories like mine that don't include those elements that are written by women of color. So, and currently, nobody on the bestseller list is a person of color in that genre.
Wow.
Yes. And there are a lot of them on the bestseller list. A lot of them. But they're all white women.
So what else are you doing now? You're a whole Laura. You're writing books. You're touring. You're showing up on TV screens and whatnot. What else is going on with you?
Well, I'm also a podcaster. I have a podcast called The Only One in the Room, which is a podcast for anyone who's ever felt alone in a room full of people. And our tagline is, which is to say, this podcast is for everyone. I'll just tell you really quickly. It started when I went to a 600-person event in 2018, and I was the only Black one. It was a writer's retreat. Elizabeth Gilbert and Cheryl Strait. I was super excited. I got up to the Santa Cruz Mountains, and for 3 days, I was the only Black face I saw. And girl, I was looking in the kitchens. I was looking in housekeeping. I'm not kidding. I was looking everywhere. Like, there's got to be another Black person here. And not one for 3 whole days, 600 people. And so I wrote about that in the Huffington Post. The article went viral right away. And the responses I got were from people from all walks of life, all colors, all creeds, all ages, nationalities, all over the world, who said, me too. I know what it's like to feel alone in a room full of people. I'm not Black, but I'm disabled. I'm not Black, but I'm overweight. I'm not Black, but I have challenges with infertility. I'm the only single person out of all my girlfriends. Like, whatever it was, they connected. So those are the stories we tell on the podcast.
I like that.
Yeah, I do too. It's really fun.
So I'm going to Apros and Audios this weekend.
Nice.
And I'm looking at the, it's Black podcasters.
Yes.
All over the world.
Yes.
And it's amazing. It's going to be amazing. So what is your advice to them in how to grow a podcast, grow and monetize? Tell them.
I think monetizing, let me just tell you really quickly, we have an ad network and they sell ads for us, which is amazing. But during the summer of 2020, I took an extra step and I went around to every single business in my neighborhood that had a sign that said Black Lives Matter. And I walked into those businesses and I said, I really appreciate your sign. Are you supporting any Black-owned businesses? Because if you're not, you can sponsor my podcast, which is Black and female led. And so during I went into probably 30 businesses. We got 3 sponsors, though, who continue to sponsor us. They have gone season after season after season. So that's been one of the ways we've been able to monetize. The other is by speaking. And I'm sure you know all about this. Because I use my podcast as a platform, I can create other revenue streams, not always directly related to the podcast itself, but the branding is so important. The website's important. The social media is important. The getting like the right video and audio at the speaking gigs so I can use those in my speaker's reel is important. Investing in those things so that I have a polished package to show and people want to hire me and pay me money. That's all part of the monetization for me.
I love that. Love that. And the growing part?
The growing part, I mean, honestly, the way that we found the most effective thing is to pay for marketing. And we pay for marketing on podcast platforms like Castbox and Player FM. And they guarantee a certain amount of numbers and we grow that. And then we get to charge more for advertising. It has to make sense. You can't put in more than you're going to get out of it. But once we did the math, it made sense for us. And we did it a lot in the first couple of years. We don't do it as much anymore because we have an audience now. But to build that audience, that was really helpful.
Love that. Well, listen, I feel like I could still talk to you for like an hour, but I know you're busy. So I'm going to let you go. I'm sad about that, but I hope we keep in touch. You're in LA, right?
I am. I'm in Sherman Oaks.
And you just moved to Sherman Oaks?
I'm from Studio City.
Okay.
Yeah, so just like down the street, basically.
Yeah, I was like, you didn't really move. And you don't want to come to beach cities, huh? You don't want to come to South Bay?
I'll come. I'll travel. It's another country, but I'll travel.
Why would I have friends that come out here? They'll be like, "Oh, I'm in LA," and they're like in Anaheim,
right?
And they're like in Hollywood, and I'm like, "Do you
have any idea?" No idea.
Girl, I lose friends because I'm like, I break out in a headache every time you say get on the freeway.
Oh no, yeah, 5 mile radius. That's my happy place.
So what's next for you? I mean, what do the people have to look out for? Yeah, I know you got your pod. Mm-hmm. Is there anything new coming up? You got your book, you got your pod.
Yeah, I'm writing a second book and I'm in edits right now with my agent. And this one is autofiction. Mm. So it's based on my real life as a publicist, as a Black publicist in the 1990s. And it's about a betrayal, a very serious betrayal that happened for real in my life, but I've fictionalized it so I don't hurt the people involved. Mm. so far it's been getting very exciting feedback from everyone. So I'm writing away on that. And I also I write articles. I write articles, every couple months. So I always post them on my site and I post about them on social media. And my paperback comes out in March. So I'll be doing a mini authors tour around that. So that's what's coming up for me.
I love that. Listen, I hope we stay connected.
Me too.
Definitely want to continue to support the work that you're doing. So as you're, zooming around the world and doing cool things and showing up, tell your people to let my people know so we can
Yes.
support that and make sure that the people know this is a very important topic. I mean, maybe I've made light of it a little bit, but when you're in the fight of it, it can be, some people don't survive it.
No.
And
Most
that's the
people.
hard truth about it. So we have to continue to have these conversations in a transparent way. So I appreciate you doing that. What is your advice to people around addicts that have an idea, but they haven't acknowledged it? Like, like your friends.
Mhm.
They have an idea, they really want to help. They're not sure though. What do you
Yeah,
tell those
I
people?
think the most helpful thing for me when I was in the throes of my addiction was someone who had had experience with it, someone who was kind of in your position. It wasn't their personal experience, but it was family experience. And them just telling me that they saw me and that they were there if I needed anything. And they dipped right back out of that and we went into our regular conversation. It was a hand on my shoulder. It was clear eye contact. Look, I see what's happening and I want you to know that I'm here if you need anything. And I shrugged that off as quickly as possible, but they were the first person I contacted when I was ready,
Oh,
months later.
real quick, back. So with this book and with your next book, especially
Yeah.
because it is a personal experience, are you
Yes.
talking to these people that you involve in your stories before you release these books? Do they know this is coming out, or if they're going to be included in it, or do you just
Yeah.
isolate and write?
Yeah, no, for sure. Like the people, like I said, that were close to me, my ex-husband, he read it first. My kids had the opportunity to read it. My parents knew exactly what I was putting in the book. My friends wanted to read their pages to see like how they came off and they all approved. And yeah, I didn't want to blindside anybody with anything. I wanted everybody to feel good about being someone in my life.
Now, what about this next book? I know you're talking about betrayal.
Yes, this is why it's fiction. Not everybody's going to feel good about this book.
Can't wait to read it. Can't
Yes.
wait to read it.
Thank
Can't
you.
wait.
Thank
Well,
you.
thank you again so much. Continue to do your thing and shine a light on this important issue.
Thank
And
you.
yeah, keep writing, keep enlightening us and empowering us. I appreciate you.
I appreciate you. Thank you.
Thanks for being here. So look, y'all, if you don't have the book, okay, I'm going to continue to tell you get the book. I want y'all to read. I know you come to podcasts because you don't like to read. You just want to hear the cliff notes from the people, but you got to read. There's so many gems and some things that you just need to read on your own and feel it. Like sometimes I think we don't allow ourselves to really feel the emotion and the humanity in what's going on, but reading does that. You have a moment, you can sit in it, think about some people around you that might need that hand on their shoulder, all that good stuff. The book's great. I went through it quickly. Let me see. I'll tell you, it's a couple hundred pages, 270 something. You can do it. I promise. But it's a good read. It really is. So take the time, read it. I know there's probably someone in your life that you might even be able to share it with. So again, thank you for being here. And, we'll see you back here next time. Hey, thanks for showing up to the podcast where we all know that the best leaders are lifetime learners. When you get a sec, take a moment, leave a comment. What you think about today's episode, and share it with someone that you know could use the gems that were dropped today. Follow and subscribe. You don't want to miss who's coming up next. You never know who could show up here and what they could say. For your professional needs, marketing, PR, communications, and leadership, Make sure you follow us on all social media platforms at Sand and Shores, or hit us up at sandandshores.com. Again, thanks so much for showing up. We appreciate you, and we'll see you soon.